It's incredibly ironic and indicates a certain lack of insight and a lack of self-understanding for the US and for the West to accuse China or anyone else of economic coercion when the US is the undisputed king of economic coercion. And that's an expression which has been shared even by analysts in the US themselves, including Jeffrey Sachs, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, a very kind of preeminent US economist. The US is engaged in economic coercion all over the world today. The US imposes unilateral sanctions on China, on the DPRK, on Iran, on Syria, on Cuba, on Venezuela, on Nicaragua, Eritrea, Zimbabwe, and several other countries. All adds up to the US being by far the world's biggest deployer of economic coercion and unilateral coercive measures. In addition to that, the US and the Western lending institutions employ loan conditionality, which is also a form of economic coercion. So if you go to the US for a loan, if you go to the IMF for a loan, if you go to Western lending institutions for a loan, as a developing country, as a poor country, as a country in need of immediate and urgent resources, then the loan that comes your way is the loan that comes with conditions such that you may be forced to deregulate your local industry, you may be forced to privatize water supplies, education systems, and so on. And this is a form of economic coercion. This is a form of forcing another country into a pattern of behavior that it doesn't want, that it wouldn't choose otherwise if it weren't for the need for urgent resources and urgent loans. And that's by definition a form of coercion. China, on the other hand, does not engage in any unilateral sanctions. China follows the spirit and the letter of international law when it comes to imposition of sanctions. China does not engage in loan conditionality. China's loans are agreed on a state-to-state or a company-to-company basis, and they're used for projects that are, as Senegalese President Macky Sall has said, designed and thought of by African states and that meet the needs of African people. And that's been the case across Africa, across Latin America, across the Middle East, across the Pacific, that China's involved in lending. But this whole idea that it's involved in coercive measures or a debt trap has been thoroughly debunked. And it's very surprising, if you think about it, that all of the countries that are accusing China of engaging in debt trap tactics, none of them are actually the recipients of these loans. You don't have Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Senegal or Zimbabwe or Democratic Republic of Congo or Argentina or Cuba or Venezuela or Nicaragua accusing China of being engaged in debt traps. It's only the US and it's Britain and it's the European Union and Canada that are accusing China of being engaged in a debt trap. This is a very strange situation where the victims of a crime are not complaining about it, but some other people who are not the victims of the crime, but who want to kind of slander and engage in a propaganda war against China are making these accusations. And it's very similar to the situation with the accusation of human rights abuses in Xinjiang. There's not a single Muslim majority country, there's no countries in the Middle East or North Africa that are making these accusations about human rights abuses in Xinjiang against a Muslim population. Pakistan doesn't make those accusations. Palestine doesn't make those accusations. Iran doesn't make those accusations. It's countries like the US, it's countries like Britain, it's countries like France, ironically, which have all been going to war against Muslim countries over the last 20 years, and which all have significant problems with Islamophobia, with ethnic and religious discrimination against Muslim people, that are making these bizarre accusations. So this slander that's being hurled at China about economic coercion, there are no facts to back it up. And in fact, whether it's a form of kind of deflection, what it's about is describing something that the West is actually engaged in and accusing China of that thing.